everyone has an idea of who Jesus is, but we want to help you know what the collection of Scripture reveals about him. Right now, we are going through the Gospel of John and taking a look at what we can learn together. Join us at the metaphorical table as we get to know Jesus through the Bible.
Welcome everybody again to the Jesus Table podcast. My name is Elliott. I'm here with Dr. Nick, and we're looking at John, at the Gospel of John, and different sevens that are throughout the Gospel, if you will. We finished looking at 7 different titles that Jesus had in the first chapter of John that John attributes to Jesus, and now we're looking at 7 different signs that Jesus does. He did more than 7, but these are the 7 that are recorded in John. And we're looking at them one by one. In our last episode, we looked at the first one, how he turned water into wine, what all of that meant. If you didn't listen to it, go back and listen to it. It was really good. And today we're looking at the second sign that is recorded here in the Gospel of John. That's the healing of the noble son. This is found in John chapter 4. And before we go into it, and then I'll toss it to you, Doc, I'm going to read it real quick. It's John 4, verses 46 through 54. And I'll just read it so we can all have a picture of what happens here, and then we'll talk about it. So John 4:46 says this: "Therefore he," being Jesus, "came again to Cana of Galilee, where he had made the water wine. And there was a royal official whose son was sick at Capernaum. When he heard that Jesus had come out of Judea into Galilee, he went to him and was imploring him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. So Jesus said to him, 'Unless you people see signs and wonders, you simply will not believe.' The royal official said to him, 'Sir, come down before my child dies.' Jesus said to him, 'Go, your son lives.' The man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and started off. As he was now going down, his slaves met him, saying that his son was living. So he inquired of them the hour when he began to get better. Then they said to him, 'Yesterday, at the 7th hour, the fever left him.' So the father knew it was at that hour in which Jesus had said to him, 'Your son lives.' And he himself believed, and his whole household. This again is the second sign that Jesus performed when he had come out of Judea into Galilee." So, well, I guess let's start here. The first verse says that he's again in the same place where we were in last episode, in Cana of Galilee, and once again doing a miracle, but this time it's not water, it's healing. So is that of any importance or anything?
I think for those of our friends and listeners that didn't hear last week, I just want to do a quick, recap. Understanding John, what he's doing here. We mentioned there are certain miracles that he writes about, or certain things that he writes about that the others, the synoptic gospels, right? Matthew, Mark, and Luke don't mention, and vice versa. So John again wrote his gospel was the last of all of them. We don't know exactly how much he was familiar with the other gospels, that were written, but he was familiar with some of them. So anyway, all of that to say that here we see something that he writes about, and I'd like to just underline one thing and explain one thing. Sometimes people get confused, I would say confused, or think that this is the same story that was said about the nobleman or the centurion, but there's a major difference, and there are different stories. First of all, the centurion asked Jesus to heal his servant, and here we have, and we'll discuss that, a nobleman or someone who worked for, most probably, and we'll get into that later, a king, but he really wasn't a king, you know. But anyway, we have someone here.
Right.
So they're different people. And most probably he was Jewish. He was not a Gentile. As we know, the centurion obviously was a Gentile. But anyway, all of that to say that what's important here is the healing and John's favorite theme, as we've mentioned so many times in all these episodes about the purpose why John wrote, so that you may believe that Jesus is the Son of God, the Christ, the Messiah. So here we have again a gentleman. We know he's a nobleman, so he was an official of the government. And he has a problem. He has a major problem, you know. He has a son who is ill, and he most probably heard about Jesus. Jesus was well known. And it's curious when you know, sometimes when you hear people teach or preach, it sounds like Jesus is rough, you know. He sort of chides people, you know, and he does that with the Pharisees. But usually he doesn't. And there's a little phrase here that I think it's important. In verse 48, so Jesus said to him, unless, this is the ESV I'm reading from, unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe. And when you look at this verse, if you don't really look at it and in depth, and especially the Greek, in Greek, and again, this is not a Greek class. We're not out to impress anybody, but there is a certain difference. There are certain languages, as you well know, Eliott, you speak Spanish also, and I do. You know, the you in English, you know, you is written the same way, and it sounds the same, you know. But, for example, in Spanish and in the Greek, here the you is plural. So Jesus said to him, but it says, unless you, plural. So Jesus is not only addressing this nobleman, but he's also addressing the people around him, you know, the Galileans. And let's not forget...
Okay. It's like not just you,
right.
the individual, right?
Exactly.
It's like, I guess in Texas,
y'all.
What we have is
y'all.
We say y'all.
Y'all. And you know what's
Yes,
the plural of y'all?
got.
Do you know what the plural of y'all is?
You all, right?
No. The plural is all you all.
Yep, I've heard that too. All of y'all, I'm like, that's very redundant. But yes, sorry, continue.
No, we got to add a little bit of humor here anyway. So here, Jesus is not just saying that to this gentleman. He's saying it to the crowd that's there. And let's not forget in Galilee also, the great majority of Jesus' ministry was spent up in Galilee. You know, the great majority of his time. And, you know, some people, again, misconceptions, as if Jesus hung out all the time in Jerusalem, and it really wasn't like that at all. So Jesus is addressing his people, the people that know him. And, of course, Galilee, as we've mentioned in other episodes, Galilee was a place that was looked down upon by the people from the capital, from Jerusalem, the main city, you know. They were sort of like country bumpkins, if I can use that phrase. So at the same time, you have Jesus from there, known from there, doing the majority of his ministry there, but yet many of them did not believe, as John later shows us in the gospel. So Jesus is not only addressing the gentleman here, the nobleman, but he's also telling them, hey, unless if you see signs and wonders, you won't believe. And I think we need to also discuss the fact that signs and wonders are a part of the gospel, but it is not the gospel. Let me explain that a little bit. It's something. There are some people that believe, and I respect these beliefs, but they believe that if the Lord does a sign, people will automatically believe, you know? And it's not necessarily true. And the reason why I say this, I think both the New and the Old Testament show times that God did miracles for his people. And some people hardened their hearts, you know, didn't believe, or they try to find other ways. Right. But here, what Jesus is referring to is the importance of believing in him. And it's curious to note at the end, well, first of all, and we can discuss that now too, the Father, after the miracle, right, the Father believes, it says very clearly, again, going back to John's theme, that they may believe that Jesus is the Son of God, the Messiah, the Christ. And also it says his household.
Right.
So the real purpose of this, again, whole story is that people believe in who Jesus is. And I know we've said this many times.
Yeah.
But it's not that we forget or we want to sort of just repeat. But it's important that we believe, and we need to understand what it means to believe biblically. It's not just an emotion; it's believing in a person and his work. And that person, of course, is John makes it very clear from verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word, right, was God. In other words, it's believing in the person and work of Jesus Christ. So that's what I find so fascinating we, in all our discussions, because if we don't understand the central point of this, we can go on rabbit trails, all sorts of rabbit trails, But the thought again that John wants to point to is Jesus as the Son of God. The word sign, a sign points to something. So these signs all point to the person who did the sign, who's Jesus Christ. And his power and his authority.
The end of it here is not that is the healing, but at the end is like it says that he believed and his whole household believed.
Exactly.
And that again is like the point of the story. That is so good. And when Jesus is like telling him what you mentioned, that he says, unless you, now we know it's y'all.
Yeah.
So unless y'all see miracles and signs, you do not believe. The version I have, the NASB, it says, unless you people see signs and wonders, you simply do not believe. So I guess they added the word people there to make it clear.
Exactly.
But that's really good because I don't think other translations have that.
Exactly. And and I like that when you read that.
Right here, I think that was good, but I wonder how he said it. If he was a little bit sad when he said it, if he was slightly annoyed, or if he was just like, it is the way it is, But either way, I think it's out of love and compassion that he just wants these people to not miss out on the whole point, and not make these signs the point. He wants to remind them that this is not the point of the gospel. At the end of the day, it's supposed to be that they find life, eternal life in him. Like you said, the purpose of John is, and this right there, a contrast between unless you people see with your eyes, you will not believe, and it's throughout everywhere. In John 20, he tells Thomas, blessed are those you've seen and therefore you believe, but blessed are those who believe without seeing.
Exactly.
Hebrews 11:1 says that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the assurance of things not seen. And there it is, the contrast again. Or 2 Corinthians 5, where it says we walk by faith, not by sight. This contrast between seeing and believing is then, throughout the whole New Testament, I guess you could say. And then I guess going back to one thing, he said that he had heard about Jesus. And that means, like you said, people were sharing it. This is part of the good news, I guess, that we get to do in Romans 10. How people believe unless they hear the good news of Jesus, right? But here, he doesn't just hear about him. He gets to have this encounter, right?
Exactly.
Going back to our series of encounters. But yeah, I think going back a little bit, you said that he was a royal official, that he was a Jew under Herod.
Most probably, yeah.
But then
Herod Antipas,
most probably,
who was the son of Herod, King Herod, or Herod the Great. It was his son. He had a number of sons, and he was a tetrarch. He was the one that oversaw Galilee. So it was another Herod. And sometimes, again, when you think of, you read scripture, and if you don't do the background and study some of those things, you think it's the same Herod, but it's not the same Herod. That's why I think it's so important what we're doing. And, we invite people after our podcast for them to study on their own and dig deeper. Sometimes, as we've so many times said, we haven't had enough time to really hit everything. And that's what hopefully some of the, hearers are going to be doing on their own. It'll spark a little bit of curiosity or wondering. So that's why this podcast. We want people to be in the Word.
And then one thing I wanted to point out was interesting is that the nobleman asks him to come with him. The nobleman says, "Sir, come down before my child dies," and he doesn't. Jesus doesn't go. Instead, he just says it. He says, "Go, your son lives." And this is you were sharing the difference between this story and the story of the centurion.
Right.
And the centurion story, it's different because the centurion doesn't ask him to come. He actually says, "Don't come." Just say the word. So here he's asking him to come, but I wonder why Jesus didn't go, because there's other stories where Jesus does go. Where he says, "Sure, I'll go with you," and he walks all the way, and then he prays for them or whatever. But here, I guess Jesus can do whatever he wants, right? He heals and does miracles in different ways. And this time he doesn't go, he just says it.
Yeah.
And I wonder if he did it to kind of test him, to test his faith or to encourage his faith. I
think it's very possible. And he responded in a very positive manner in that he obeyed Jesus, And again, I mean, we can speculate and say, well, Jesus had an appointment in a half hour or whatever, But
he's too busy.
Yeah, he was too busy, or he was going somewhere else, etc. But what is amazing, again, the whole theme of believing, it says very clearly in that verse that he believed. Jesus just said the word, and the gentleman believed, and that's the bottom line. And believing also has to. I know we're saved by faith. Please don't anyone here think that we're saying we're not saved by faith in grace, But our believing has to be demonstrated, or is demonstrated by how we behave, how we respond to God,
Right.
So it's curious, Yeah, he said, "Come on, Jesus, come with me," And Jesus didn't say no, But he says, Jesus said to him, "Go, your son will live." In other words, he says, "Don't worry about it. Your son's okay." And I love the way John writes this, and he sort of confirms everything with the servants when they come. And verse 51, and as he was going down, his servants met him and told him that his son was recovering. It's just, again, how the Lord was obeyed by this gentleman. And his faith, it's like the 10 lepers. I think it's in Luke, when he told them, "Show yourself to the priest," and they go, and as they went, they were healed, And it's something very similar here.
Yeah.
Jesus says the word, the guy obeys, and here we have the servants coming and saying, "Your son is healed." And on top of it, John tells us, he was healed at the 7th hour. And maybe for some of our friends, it's important for us to realize and understand that the 7th hour isn't 7 p.m. or 7 a.m. Normally, the first hour of the day, the Jews, at 6 a.m. was the first hour. So here we have, for example, when Jesus dies, it says in the 9th hour, which was approximately 3 p.m. So at 6 a.m. is the first hour. So if you add 7 to that, it would be at 1 p.m. So this was approximately 1 p.m., when Jesus healed. He healed, but he also told the Father, he said, "Go." And the servants confirmed that. And I think with signs and wonders, it's very important that we have that confirmation. And I say that because tragically, sometimes there have been charlatans or people who have faked things like that. And sadly enough, it does happen. It happened in the past, and it happens today, So we need that confirmation. And I think here we see John confirming not only the hour, but also the result of what had happened through the mouths of the servant. And when the Lord, sovereignly heals someone today, I think we need to show confirmation. Because sometimes there's goodwill or intentions, and people say, "I've been healed," and we've heard of stories they've passed away or not healed. and then that also does a lot of damage. So
right, yeah, that's true. The fruit of the truth,
Yeah.
right? Just like our faith requires then
Yeah.
evidence,
Yeah.
if it really is genuine faith and trust, and if it's really God moved, then we'll see the
praise
fruit of
the
it.
Lord. Exactly.
That's great, and that's so interesting to see about the same hour, and I think that was to make sure that he gave Jesus the honor and glory, because I think what could have easily happened is that he comes home, his son is healed, and he's like, that was a weird coincidence. Maybe it wasn't what Jesus said. Maybe
Exactly.
he just got better, But to know that it was the exact hour, I think confirmed for him it was Jesus' words that spoke it. Because I think I've seen so many people get healed sometimes when we pray, or let's say we're praying for someone to get healed of a sickness, right? But at the same time, we're giving them medicine because
Right.
you don't need to do either or. It could be you're praying
Right.
and you're also giving them medicine. You're applying wisdom, right? But you're still believing for God to heal this person, and then they get better. And I've seen so many people be like, "Oh, it must have been that medicine that kicked in," or which could have been, or it was like, "Oh, I know what it was," and so next time someone else gets sick with the same thing, we're like, "Here, take this medicine because that's what healed them," and instead of saying, "Wait, was it the medicine or was it Jesus?" Because we were also praying throughout this whole time. But we can so easily attribute the healing to medicine or to coincidence to our own rest or something else, right? And I think we're quick to do that sometimes. We're quick to give something else the glory, if you will.
That's very good,
the honor. And here there was no doubt, and I think John, that's why he says it was the same exact time Jesus spoke it. Like, don't even think it was like just coincidence or anything else. It was Jesus who did this, and I think again for the purpose of him believing, right? Because first he says that he believes his words. Like when Jesus says, "Go, your son lives," the man believed the word that Jesus spoke. So there's a difference between that belief that says he believed the word that Jesus spoke, and then at the end of the passage it says that where is it? Jesus that he believed and his whole household believed. So this time it wasn't just him believing the word that Jesus spoke, but now putting his faith in Jesus the person and who he was.
You know,
what I mean?
Eliott, you just remind me of something. As a matter of fact, it was in these days, 15 years ago, 14 years ago, 2009, I hemorrhaged 70 to 80% of all the blood in my body, and the Lord sovereignly healed me, exactly like the woman with the issue of blood. And I have this all documented. But the reason why I say that is because the doctors before, they were supposed to do a surgery on me, and the doctors before that, they shared, they didn't know what, I was just hemorrhaging. I would get a blood transfusion and my body wouldn't, I just hemorrhage again, the whole thing. And the day before, the surgeon comes in with part of her team, and she tells me, "We're going to operate tomorrow, but we don't know what's going to happen." It was very, it wasn't looking good. The next day, 6 a.m. in the morning, the surgeon comes in with her whole team, and she says, "We don't know what happened, but you've stopped bleeding." And one of the people that were with the surgeon, he came in and says, "Well, sometimes, the body just heals itself, And it's exactly what you're saying, because, 24 hours before, I was literally dying. And the surgeon said, "We don't know what's happening. We don't know what's going on, but we have to operate. We have to find out, otherwise you will die." And here you have this medical person coming in and just very lightly saying, "Well, sometimes the body heals itself." And I didn't think of it at the moment, but I later thought to myself, I said, it's strange that person would say that, because 24 hours before, they didn't have a clue of what's going on. So the same happens here, and Jesus does get all the glory.
Yeah.
And he continues to heal today, because he did that very sovereignly. I was healed instantly, just like that woman. I was told that it would take roughly 3 to 6 months for my hemoglobin to go up to normal numbers. Less than a week later, my hemoglobin was at the right number, and 10 days later, I was on a plane to Guatemala to preach. So again, God does do it. God continues to do it.
Yeah.
And it was 14 years ago this week,
awesome.
As a matter of fact. I just looked at the calendar. Yep. So I thank the Lord for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same Jesus.
Yep.
Same Jesus.
Exactly.
That's great.
And I think that's a good note.
Well, I think it's a good place to.
Yep.
Yeah. We're thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Doc.
Yeah.
This is who Jesus is, and I enjoyed going through this second miracle with you. We'll see you all next time. We're going to go through the third sign that Jesus miracle that Jesus did here in John in our next episode. Yep. We want to invite you to join us reading John and keep diving into the Word with us. And God bless you. We'll see you all next time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Jesus Table podcast. We pray that these conversations are a blessing for anyone seeking to know who Jesus is and for those seeking to know him even more.